3 spine-chilling fishing tales. Terrifying encounters with the cursed depths revealed Oak Hollow was a ghost town, filled with memories and shadows. The old factory machines had long fallen silent, leaving only a chilling wind that whispered secrets through the empty storefronts. For Sarah, a resilient single mother, there was a desperate kind of magic in the air, one that was thick with the scent of fish and potential, but laced with the curse of the lake that lay just beyond town. "Stay clear of the dark waters," the old fishermen warned, their faces etched with angst and grief. But Sarah brushed off their superstitions, determined to take her son, Tommy, on a fishing trip that would hopefully snag them dinner. She clutched a crumbled note from Bill, the town's fishing guide, offering to show them the best spots on the lake. Despite her pride pricking at her, she accepted. Their excitement blossomed as they paddled out into the murky depths, the setting sun casting an eerie glow over the water. The shadows beneath the surface darted, twisting with unnatural speed. "Look, Mommy! Fish!" Tommy's laughter broke through the tension, but Sarah's heart raced, unease gripping her. The farther they drifted, the thicker the tension became, as if the lake itself held its breath, waiting. The sky deepened into bruised purples and blacks as night fell. The sounds of crickets took on a sinister tone, wrapping around them like fingers. Bill leaned closer, whispering in a voice that sent shivers down her spine, the lantern casting flickering shadows across his face. There was something off about him, something that felt as old as the lake itself. "You know, they say some boats never come back," he murmured, trailing off as he glanced into the water. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As the boat swayed, Sarah felt the air grow colder, almost electric. With a flash of movement, she glanced at the water. The surface rippled, dark shapes glided beneath, and the tension was suffocating. She caught a glimpse of Bill's tackle box, stuffed with faded photos of smiling fishermen. Her blood turned to ice when she recognized a few faces, fishermen from the town who had vanished years ago. "Bill?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Where did they go?" He turned, the lopsided grin stretching unnaturally across his face, eyes glinting with a predatory gleam that twisted her insides. "Too close to the depths. Took their chances, just like you." A monstrous splash echoed, reverberating through the silence. Tommy squealed, his eyes wide with delight and innocence. But Sarah's instincts flared. She felt as if they were being watched, hunted by something lurking below. The lake's dark waters surged, sending waves crashing against the boat. When the boat jolted, tossing them, Sarah's heart plummeted. She clutched Tommy against her, the depths yawning beneath them, hungry and relentless. Eyes, countless eyes, glared from below, whispering promises of despair. The water thrashed around them, and Sarah knew, in that desperate moment, the true horror of the lake was not simply its depths, but the creature that beckoned from its shadows. The fight for survival had only just begun. The darkness closed in, smothering them with an oppressive weight. Tommy's laughter faded, replaced by a breathless silence that screamed. Sarah gazed into the water, where shadows twisted like tormented souls. They weren't alone. Something was out there, lurking, hungering. Every instinct told her to turn back, but Bill's eyes held her captive, glimmering with a sinister knowing. "We shouldn't have come here," she said, fear tightening her throat. "Don't you see?" Bill's voice was a seductive hiss, drawing closer. "This is where the true fish are. The deeper they swim, the tastier they get." Fear twisted into confusion. How could he talk about fishing when danger lurked beneath? The grasp of the night tightened, wrapping around her like a predator's embrace. The sudden wave crashed against the side of the boat, rocking them violently. "Mommy!" Tommy cried, panic spilling from his lips. She gripped him tighter, teeth clenched as she fought to keep them steady. The water churned, rippling with chaotic energy as shadows darted beneath the surface. Something massive surged forward, sending a jolt through the boat, splashing cold water against their faces. "Bill!" she shouted, desperation spilling out. "We need to go back." But he merely chuckled, his demeanor darkening, transforming into something truly horrifying. The light from the lantern flickered, casting monstrous shapes across his face, distorting his features into a ghoulish mask of glee. "They love to play," he whispered, and for a heart-stopping moment, the very water glimmered with movement. Shadows rose like ethereal arms beckoning them closer. An ancient connection pulsed, something insatiable hidden in the depths, waiting for them to lose hope. "Mommy, I don't like this." Tommy's sweet voice broke through her panic. He looked at her, his innocence piercing. In his wide eyes, she saw something that gripped her heart: fear. The kind of dread that clung to your bones and had no easy escape. She needed to protect him. "We need to go." The lake roared as if in response, a monstrous bellow that rattled the very air. The water swelled, a dark tide rising, and the boat rocked perilously. All sense of direction vanished. Time melted. Voices, whispers, echoed around them. "Join us, stay with us." Drawing on the remaining courage, Sarah thrust her paddle into the water, hands trembling. "Bill, stop this!" she yelled, each word a desperate lifeline. "You're scaring my son." But he was already turning, glancing back into the lake, a wide, manic grin unfurling. "It's too late," he said, his voice merging with the rushing water. The lantern flickered one last time before plunging them into a veil of darkness. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she fought against the rising tide, but with each pull, the darkness seemed to wrap tighter around them. The boat began to twist, spinning away from the thoughts of escape, the lake's surface bubbling like a cauldron ready to burst. Then something broke through the surface, a titan of a figure, scales glimmering in the faint moonlight, its eyes pools of black despair. Sarah's scream died in her throat, choked by primal abject terror. And then it was gone, swallowed by the night. "Mommy, I'm scared," Tommy whispered. But Sarah's fear had turned to a chilling resolve. "Hold on tight," she said. "We're getting out of here." A powerful surge beneath them released a torrent of thrashing water, and the boat bucked violently again. The furious lake seemed intent on dragging them down into its cursed embrace. But Sarah's fight wasn't over. She had to get Tommy to safety before the darkness took them both. With every ounce of strength, she paddled, desperation fueling her. But just as she thought they were escaping, she felt the lake grabbing hold of the boat, clawing at the edges with icy tendrils, trying to pull them back. The fight for survival had only just begun, and the darkness birthed even more terrifying secrets from the depths below. What would the lake demand in return for their freedom? As shadows danced on the water's edge, an ominous thought crept into her mind. What if they weren't the first to try to escape? What if they weren't meant to escape at all? The uncertainty settled like a stone in her gut. Sarah looked at Tommy, the innocence in his gaze still shining, but could that light withstand the terror that loomed? The darkness was ever hungry, and now it seemed to know their names. In that moment, a soft flicker caught her eye, a light in the distance. Hope? Or was it a bait, drawing them deeper into the swamp of despair? The choice hovered as the water groaned, ready to devour. They had to decide, fast. Would they race towards the light or be lured into the abyss? The flicker danced, teasing Sarah's mind in a chaotic battle between fear and the promise of salvation. "Mommy, the light!" Tommy gasped, eyes bright with a mix of hope and fear. The weight of the lake loomed behind them, an unyielding nightmare that threatened to pull them back into its horror. She glanced over her shoulder. Black waves undulated, whispering secrets of lost souls. "Hold on tight," she shouted, her voice almost lost in the roar of the wind. She pushed the paddle into the water with every ounce of strength she had left, forcing the boat toward the distant glow. Each stroke felt like wading through molasses, the water now cold and eerily calm as they drew closer to the light. It pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing them in, yet every instinct warned her of its danger. As they approached, she could make out the shape of an old dock jutting out from the shoreline. The light was coming from an old lantern swinging in the breeze. Sarah's heart raced. Something about the sight breathed life into her frail spirit. But would it be a safe haven or another trap? "Keep your eyes on that, Tommy. We're almost there." She didn't dare look back again. That was the kind of risk that could cost them everything. The paddle splashed rhythmically against the water's surface, the sound both reassuring and haunting. And then a chilling roar erupted from beneath. The lake was furious. A wave surged, smashing against the boat's side, threatening to capsize them. Tommy screamed, clutching her leg. Chaos erupted, water pouring over the edges. "Stay calm. Hold on," she yelled, her heart pounding in sync with the crash of the waves. The light flickered with intensity, illuminating the deep shadows lapping at their boat. Was it hope or mockery? Fear clawed at her. Just a few more strokes, but the water turned against them, a malevolent force that wanted them drowned. The boat tilted, and for a moment, Sarah lost her sense of balance. They were teetering on the brink of disaster. She threw her weight toward the opposite side, struggling to steady themselves. Then, in a split second, a monstrous figure erupted from the depths, an enormous, serpentine shape, glistening in the waning light. Its eyes were voids, consuming all light that dared to touch them. Time froze as Sarah and Tommy locked eyes with the beast. "Get down," she screamed, pulling Tommy low. The creature's maw opened wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth as it reared back, as if to strike. Panic flooded her veins. "Go, go," she motioned with frantic urgency, paddling with all her might. Each stroke felt like wading through concrete, but they had to reach that dock. The light was their only salvation, their only chance to escape the nightmare surging beneath. Suddenly, the boat broke free from the beast's reach, catching a brief swell that propelled them forward. Sarah gripped the edge, her knuckles white from the tension. They surged toward the wooden dock, splashing onto its banks. No time to breathe. No time to think. They climbed out, stumbling onto solid ground, the lantern casting sickly shadows that seemed to slither along the pier. Panting, they turned to the water. The monster-s had emerged, staring at them with those dark pooling eyes, as if daring them to return. The lake roared again, a deep, menacing rumble beneath them. What was that? Tommy whispered, fear cracking his voice. "I don't know," Sarah gasped, trying to catch her breath. But lingering dread tightened around her chest, echoing with the uncertainty of what waited in the depths. Just then, a heavy silence fell. The light flickered violently, drawing their eyes back. A shadow loomed, darker than the night itself, slowly creeping across the dock. "The lake, it wants something," Sarah breathed, her heart sinking. A realization blossomed. This wasn't over. The darkness still lurked. And even here, under the fading glow of the lantern, the shadows were closing in. What would it demand from them next? The darkness tightened around them, as if the night itself was folding in. Sarah's heart raced. The lantern light swung erratically, casting grotesque shadows that danced along the dock. Each flicker sent a jolt through her, amplifying her fear. "Mommy, what is happening?" Tommy's voice quivered, his small frame trembling beside her. She looked down at him, vulnerability etched in his pale face. They had run from the water, but here, under the lantern's sickly glow, the sense of safety was slipping away. "I don't know." Her voice felt small, swallowed by the rising winds that whispered with unsettling secrets. Suddenly, the lantern's flames sputtered and dimmed. Panic clawed at Sarah's throat. "No, please, not now." She fumbled to pull it closer, desperate for its warmth. The shadows slithered forward, a palpable malevolence unfurling toward them. With the light flickering, they scanned the darkness around the dock, feeling as if countless unseen eyes watched from the tree line. An unsettling rustle echoed nearby. Something moved just beyond the reach of the lantern's glow. "Stay close," Sarah whispered fiercely, pulling Tommy into her side. Tonight had already revealed horrors, and she had no intention of letting her son slip into the depths of either the lake or that encroaching darkness. "Mommy, the light?" It's Tommy stuttered, pointing. "I see it." Sarah's heart raced. The light was fading. She could feel the chill creeping back in, erasing all they had fought to reach. The glow sputtered again, casting their faces into stark relief. Then came a sound. A low, groaning wail echoed from the depths of the forest behind them. It resembled a voice, begging, pleading, or perhaps warning them. Suddenly, the lantern flickered violently, and then darkness. It went out completely. "Tommy!" she gasped, her breath hitching. The oblivion of night enveloped them. "Mommy, I can't see," he cried, fear transforming his voice into a strangled whimper. "Hold on to me." She gripped Tommy tight, every nerve in her body alive with fear. The weight of the lake loomed again, and in that pitch black, the shoreline felt unfathomably close yet immeasurably far. Shadows twisted around them, breathing in the dark. Sarah could hear the low splash of water cutting through silence, making her pulse quicken. "We need to run," she whispered hoarsely. "Where?" Tommy's small voice quavered. "Anywhere but here." In one swift motion, she pulled him toward the path leading away from the dock. The ground beneath her feet was uneven, every creak and crack an ominous threat urging her to look back. But the fear of what lay behind surged her forward. They darted along the narrow trail, and that haunting wail followed, growing louder. It was becoming a cacophony of tortured voices, the deceased perhaps, calling for one left behind. "Don't look back, Tommy. Just keep moving." Her own heart pounded like a war drum as they stumbled deeper into the darkness. The shadows were alive, trying to encircle them, gripping at their ankles like spectral hands. Suddenly, a harsh light blazed ahead, piercing through the veil of shadows. Relief washed over her, but it was quickly overshadowed by dread. The light revealed the entrance to a dilapidated cabin, overgrown with vines and darkness. "Mommy, what if it's not safe?" Tommy whispered, fear etched across his face. "It's better than out here," she insisted, urgency rising. As they reached the door, the wailing turned to an anguished roar, and she fumbled frantically with the knob. The sound intensified behind them as she forced the door open, pulling Tommy inside just as something massive collided with the cabin wall. "Lock it," Tommy shouted, panic creeping in. Sarah slammed the door shut, urgency merging with desperation as she twisted the rusty handle. Silence engulfed them for a beat, only to be pierced by a chilling knock, urgent and insistent. The air grew dense, thick with malevolent energy, and they exchanged glances, eyes wide with terror. What had they unwittingly invited inside? "Mommy," Tommy whimpered, his small hands trembling in fear. Something was waiting outside, something that wouldn't let them go that easily. Fear tightened like a vice in Sarah's chest, a chilling thought creeping in. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about facing the truth behind the lake's curse. What dark secrets would the night reveal next? The cabin, a forgotten relic of a time long past, creaked ominously as if it was alive, welcoming them, or perhaps ensnaring them. The air inside felt stale, suffocating, laden with dust and decay. The walls groaned, and Sarah instinctively took a step back, clutching Tommy against her. "Mommy, what did we do?" Tommy's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. "We'll be okay, just for a moment," Sarah replied, forcing a calmness into her voice that she didn't feel. She couldn't let panic infect Tommy. Not now. Not when they needed each other most. The chilling knock came again, louder this time, shaking the flimsy door on its hinges. "Open up," a deep, gravelly voice called from outside. It sent icy fingers running down Sarah's spine. She glanced at Tommy. His wide eyes glistened with unshed tears. Who's there?" Sarah called, surprised by how weak her voice sounded. She wanted to sound firm, to reassure him, but dread twisted in her gut. "We know you're in there." The voice came again, condescending, oozing malice. "You can't hide forever." She felt her heart thudding painfully against her ribcage, echoing a silent cry for survival. They couldn't stay, but how could they escape this dark prison? "Mommy, what if they get in?" Tommy whimpered, his fingers clutching her waist tightly. "I don't know," she admitted, scanning the cramped room for an escape route. There were no windows, just dark corners that seemed to loom ominously, swallowing the meager light from the weathered lantern perched on a rickety table. Her mind raced, searching for a plan. Suddenly, the door shook again, rattling against its frame with a force that felt almost supernatural. Fear consumed her thoughts. She had seen horror movies. They were always filled with desperate protagonists, and yet, this was new. No script could prepare her for this tangible dread creeping into the corners of her soul. "Stay back," she shouted, desperately raising the lantern in defiance, its flickering light revealing nothing but dark wood and shadows. The knocking intensified, transforming into a violent battering. Her palms were clammy around the lantern as adrenaline rushed through her. "There has to be another way out," she muttered almost to herself. "Mommy." Tommy's fright exploded, his small frame shaking as he pointed to a corner of the cabin. Sarah's eyes followed his trembling finger. There, half obscured by a heavy curtain of dust, was a trapdoor, almost swallowed by the floorboards. "What's that?" she gasped. "Don't go there," Tommy cried, but she felt an urgent pull, a whispering promise of escape. We have to, Tommy. We have to try? She hurried toward it, kneeling down and tugging at the rotting handle, her heart thundering with each moment. Please let it be safe, she whispered, lifting the door. A gust of dank, cold air rushed out, wrapping around them like hands. That same otherworldly chill that had seeped into their bones by the lake. The knocking stopped as they shared a moment of frozen silence. The cabin felt still, watching. Holding her breath, Sarah carefully leaned closer. Dark shadows lurked beneath the door, and she could hear a faint whispering, like a lullaby lost to time. They hesitated, gazes locked. What do you think is down there? Tommy asked, trembling hard enough that she could feel it. I don't know, but we can't stay here, she replied, each word heavy with an unspoken truth. Before she could second-guess herself, she reached a hand toward Tommy, eyes pleading. We can't let whatever is out there come in here. We need to go down. Now. As they descended the creaking steps, darkness enveloped them, swallowing their forms whole. The whispers grew louder and darker, now undeniably angry, clawing at their ears, urging them forward. Mommy, I don't like this. Tommy squeaked, his voice quivering with terror. Neither do I, she confessed softly, but the deeper they went, the more it felt like there was nowhere left to go but down. Suddenly, the door above them slammed shut with bone-rattling finality. They were plunged into complete darkness, and then the whispers turned to screams. What awaited them at the end of the descent? The darkness wrapped around them like a heavy shroud. In the suffocating silence, Sarah felt her heartbeat ricochet in her chest, loud and frantic. She squeezed Tommy's hand, anchoring herself in the moment, trying to provide some comfort amidst the escalating dread. Mommy, I'm scared, Tommy whimpered, his breath warm against her ear. The echoes of those screams still clung to the air, gnawing at her sanity. Me too, baby. But we have to stay brave, she whispered back, her voice trembling. She forced a breath to steady herself and waved the lantern before them, but it did little to pierce the oppressive blackness that stretched before them. She could feel the air grow colder, heavy with something that felt alive and crawling with unseen presence. What's down here? Tommy asked, his voice shaking, thick with trepidation. I don't know, but we need to keep moving, she replied, her resolve faltering yet strengthened by the urgency in her voice. They stepped down and were met with a damp, gritty floor that felt wrong beneath their feet. The dim beam of the lantern flickered, casting shadows that danced wildly along the walls. Shapes seemed to twist and coil, morphing into faces that melted back into the dark, sending chills soaring down Sarah's spine. Mommy, Tommy squeaked suddenly, his voice rising in panic. Look, he pointed into the blackness ahead of them. Sarah squinted, her heart racing, and felt a sense of dread curling at her throat. A figure loomed in the distance, barely illuminated by the lantern's failing light. A woman, not a woman, but a silhouette, shifting and pulsating as though made of shadows. Its head tilted unnaturally, as if it were observing them. Please, she muttered, desperate for some semblance of answers. What do you want? The figure did not respond, but its movements grew more frantic, weaving in and out of the light. Sarah could hear the rustle of fabric, the scuttle of something restless over unseen terrain. Mommy, I want to go back. Tommy's voice shattered like glass, raw and pleading. No, Sarah snapped, panic igniting in her chest. There's nowhere to go. We have to keep moving. The whispers surged, overlapping with the ghostly presence that twisted in front of them. It sounded like a cacophony of voices, lost souls, begging for release, their words blending into a haunting chill that dug deeper into her bones. Just as fear threatened to swallow them whole, the lantern flared back to life momentarily, illuminating the figure. Sarah gasped, a surge of cold terror spreading through her as she recognized its face, a mere semblance of humanity, distorted into anguish. Run, she screamed, turning on her heel and yanking Tommy with her as the figure lunged forward, a wisp of darkness reaching for them. They ran deeper into the pitch-black corridor, past thick decaying wooden beams, and into a cavernous space that seemed to stretch infinitely. The air grew damp and suffocating. Mommy, what was that? Tommy cried, his small feet scrambling to keep pace. I don't know, Sarah yelled. Where do we go? He pleaded, the scent of damp earth filling their lungs, stirring a pit of desperation in Sarah's stomach. Anywhere but here. Yet as they turned and turned, shadows chased them, Whispers grew into guttural snarls, and the woman's anguished face blurred in the corners of her vision. The walls of the cavern shuddered, closing in, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Panic and desperation clawed at Sarah's insides. There has to be a way out. She searched frantically, eyes darting across the minuscule light illuminating a small crevice in the wall. "Mommy, look!" Tommy's voice cracked, and she followed his finger into the pitch black below them. But the moment she dared to dream of escape, a loud crash echoed through the space, shaking the earth beneath, shattering the fragile sense of hope in her heart. "Mommy!" Tommy screamed as rubble began to tumble around them. "But no, not like this." Just then, the whispers stopped. Silence engulfed them, thick as fog, but beneath it she could sense something waiting, watching, coiling like a viper ready to strike. What was lurking just beyond the silence? The air turned electric, a tension so thick it stung. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribcage as she felt Tommy's tiny fingers grip hers tighter. They were trapped, with darkness wrapping around them like a predator poised to strike. The silence felt alive, buzzing in her ears, a prelude to something terrible. She searched the space, her lantern flickering like a dying heartbeat. Shadows loomed, but now they danced silently, eerily still, waiting. "Mommy, I can't see," Tommy whimpered, his voice a tremor of pure fear. The darkness was suffocating, and each breath pulled more dread along with it. "Stay close, Tommy. We'll find a way," she said, forcing her voice to remain calm, even as terror clawed at her thoughts. She took a shaky step forward, the ground rough and unyielding under her feet. But as she moved, a sense of foreboding surged stronger, something primal that whispered danger. Suddenly, a soft, wet thud echoed, followed by a low growl that rose like smoke from below. Sarah froze. She could feel the air correct itself, stretching taut with another presence. "What was that?" Tommy asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Keep quiet," she hissed, squeezing his hand. The growl grew louder, more insistent, a terrible promise of violence lurking just out of sight. She steeled herself, pressing forward. Each heartbeat resonated in the silence, echoing her fear. The growl morphed into a series of rasping breaths, sharp and uneven, making her skin crawl. It felt as if some creature, grotesque and hungry, was slipping through the shadows, weaving closer and closer. The beam of the lantern caught movement, something slick and shimmering beneath a pile of rubble, resembling a severed arm. The skin looked pale, almost translucent. Sarah gasped and jerked backward, her grip on Tommy tightening. "Mommy, I want to go home," Tommy cried. His small voice broke through the air like a shard of glass. Before she could respond, a scream echoed, drawn out, filled with agony. They weren't alone. Something was trapped down here with them, and whatever it was desperate. "Run, Tommy, run." They darted ahead, the faint light bouncing off the twisted walls, revealing grotesque patterns that warped and shifted. The growling escalated, filling the air with primal fury. The cavern seemed endless, the path diverging into darkened nooks where whispers taunted her, spat derision like scattered fragments of laughter. Tommy tugged at her arm, his breaths coming in short gasps. "Mommy, I can't keep up. I'm scared." "I know, baby. Just a bit further," she urged, glancing over her shoulder. The darkness slithered closer, consuming everything behind them like a beast hungry for their terror. Then, a sudden flash in the shadows. A face pale and weeping, twisted with regret. It opened its mouth to scream, a sound merging with the chaos of growls and whispers, layering dread upon dread. Sarah skidded to a halt, pulling Tommy tightly against her as the lantern flickered in response to their panic. "Don't look," she shouted, yanking him away. But the image etched itself into her mind. "We need to find a way out." They turned once more, desperation fueling their flight, but the breath of shadows barely skipped behind them. Gobbling at their heels were deeper, primal growls, like wolves on the hunt, hungry and relentless. Tommy stumbled, tears streaming down his face. "Don't let it get me, Mommy." His voice trembled, eyes wide with horror. "I want tea, I promise." She looked up, scanning every inch of rock and chiseled stone around them. There had to be an exit. Suddenly, a shaft of light broke through the encroaching dark, a fissure high above, barely visible, but shining like a beacon in the void. Adrenaline surged. "There." Sarah pointed, hope igniting against the dread. "Mommy, we can't reach." But they had no choice. They needed to try. Every breath whispered urgency. Every heartbeat counted. The growls grew louder around them. A symphony of hunger that promised they didn't have much time. As they rushed toward the opening, something massive lunged out of the shadows, a mass of shifting darkness and teeth. The very fabric of the dark became monstrous and alive behind them. Jump, Tommy! Jump now! Mommy! The ground shook as they leaped toward the light, the darkness writhing behind them. Would they escape? Or would they be swallowed whole by what waited in the shadows? Had they truly found freedom? Or was this escape merely a prelude to something worse? With one last frantic push toward the flickering light, Sarah screamed, "Don't look back!" But what if the darkness had other plans? The light enveloped them, blinding and fierce, a sanctuary shimmering in the torment of that horrible darkness. For a heartbeat, Sarah felt relief, but it was fleeting. She and Tommy tumbled through the fissure, landing hard on cool, gritty ground. Gasping, she pushed herself upright, dazed but alive. "Are we safe, Mommy?" Tommy's voice was fragile, filled with the remnants of his terror. For a moment, Sarah couldn't answer. The spectral echoes of growls still reverberated in her ears, the taunting whispers haunting the edges of her mind. She took a moment to gather herself, looked around. They were in a dimly lit tunnel, the air stale and thick with a musty scent of decay. "Yes, sweetie, for now," she managed, though her heart raced with uncertainty. The walls here were damp, moist stone slick against her fingers as she pressed forward to survey their surroundings. The tunnel stretched ahead into oppressive shadows, but the flickering light from the fissure began to fade behind them, a distant memory. Anxiety crept back, coiling around Sarah's insides. "We need to keep moving," she urged, forcing Tommy to his feet. He clung to her side as they advanced, steps echoing in the eerie silence. The constraint of the dark lingered just beyond the radius of their fading light. Each inch felt like an eternity, as if the void behind them dared to swallow them whole. A part of her wanted to turn back, to reach for the light that had brought them this far, but she pushed the thought aside and pressed on. The deeper they ventured, the colder the air became. "Mommy, I don't like it here," Tommy whispered, his voice barely breaking the quiet. She glanced down at him, noting the tremor in his frame. "I know, baby. Just a little further." But then came a sound, a low, resonant hum, echoing through the tunnel, vibrating with an unsettling pulse. Sarah halted, her heart thudding in her chest. She glanced back at the fissure, but it was only darkness now, a source of both safety and terror lost to view. Tommy shivered beside her. "What is that noise?" "I don't know." As if summoned by her uncertainty, the hum intensified. It morphed into a cacophony of whispers, soft at first, then growing louder, a chorus of fearful voices mingling with a distant howl. Each syllable dripped with a promise of something sinister. Then, the ground shook as if disturbed by an unseen force. Cracks splintered the tunnel wall, sending a fresh wave of dread washing over Sarah. "Quick! We need to find an exit." They sprinted down the corridor, the whispers chasing them, tightening as they ran. The darkness around them felt alive, breathing, a hungry beast poised on their every move. Tommy's cries grew more pained, more desperate. "Don't let them get us, Mommy. I want tea." She cried fiercely, but doubt gnawed at her core. Were they even running in the right direction? Just ahead, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A figure emerged through the fog of shadows, a gaunt silhouette with an elongated face, eyes hollow and glistening like black holes. Sarah stumbled back, instinctively shielding Tommy. "Stay away," she screamed, her voice cracking under a weight of primal fear. The figure raised a hand, slender and unearthly, beckoning them closer. Its mouth opened, whispering words laden with sorrow and malice. Come closer, it's safe, don't listen, Tommy," Sarah barked, yanking him back. "We need to go." They turned to flee, when a sudden blast of cold air enveloped her, wrapping around her like icy fingers. But as they ran, the whispers became a torrent, drowning her in chaos. Remembering the shadow that pounced on them earlier, Sarah felt dread sink deeper into her gut. They turned another corner, and before them opened a cavernous chamber, vast and shadowy. And in its depths, a swirling darkness thrummed with a thunderous heartbeat, a vortex pulsating with despair and anguish. Terror gripped Sarah as she understood. They weren't just being hunted. They were being drawn into something far more malevolent. a place where nightmares thrived. "Mommy!" Tommy's tiny voice barely broke through the fear. The whispers coiled tighter. Sarah turned back just as the gaunt figure lunged at them. Its face split into a twisted grin full of jagged teeth. They were running out of time. The darkness was vast, hungry, and they had just stepped into its lair. "Run!" she shouted, pushing Tommy forward as shadows reached for them. But where was the way out? As panic churned her stomach, she realized there was no escaping this curse. The shadows loomed closer, promising a fate worse than death. "Tommy, keep your eyes on me," Sarah shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos. They were enveloped in shadow, and panic clawed at her throat. Desperation surged as they sped toward the heart of the chamber, where the pulsing vortex summoned them, a twisted dance of despair. The air thickened, suffocating in its weight, every breath feeling like a battle. She could feel the cold tendrils of the dark reaching for them, but instinct drove her forward. "Don't look back." Tommy stumbled, his tiny legs struggling to keep pace. Sarah grabbed his hand, squeezing it tight. "We can't stop." Just ahead, she spotted a faint sheen against the stone, a glimmer that promised freedom. Her heart raced with a mixture of hope and dread. "There, we can make it." Her words burst with determination, but doubt nibbled at the edges of her resolve. As they neared the glimmer, the whispers turned into a shriek, a cacophony of angry voices rising like a storm. "You will not escape. Stay with us." The chilling chorus reverberated off the cave walls, echoing around them, drowning out everything else. "Mommy!" Tommy cried, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. "I'm here," she managed, fear twisting in her gut. They pushed forward, the glimmer coming into focus, a fissure that looked just big enough for them to squeeze through. But she could see shadowy forms swirling around it, writhing and reaching toward them. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she caught the gaunt figure emerging again, its hollow eyes fixated on them, an insatiable hunger brewing within. It glided toward them, its elongated fingers outstretched, beckoning them to surrender. "Join us, it's better here now," Sarah shouted, clenching Tommy's hand tightly. "Run." The world around them seemed to shift, the walls closing in like a trap. The shadows pressurized, slimy and slick, as if they were alive, hunting them with a primal ferocity. With one final push, they reached the fissure. The glimmer was brighter now, a beacon of hope against the suffocating void. "Go. Now," she urged, shoving Tommy ahead of her, her adrenaline surging like wildfire. Tommy squeezed through, his little body disappearing into the light, but Sarah hesitated for just a moment, feeling the icy breath of the figures behind her. Heart hammering in her chest, she took a deep breath, ready to follow. But the gaunt figure lunged, its fingers brushing against her shoulder, a cold chill shooting down her spine. Don't leave him." Her blood ran cold. That voice wasn't just a whisper. It sounded familiar. With frantic urgency, Sarah hurled herself through the fissure, the cold grip of darkness releasing her just as the whispers exploded behind her, a tempest of rage and despair. She landed hard on soft grass, the night air sweet but sharp in her lungs. Gasping, she turned to find Tommy sprawled beside her, wide-eyed and trembling. They were outside, in a darkened field illuminated by a silvery moon. "We made it," he gasped, relief flooding his features. But that relief was short-lived, because as she pulled Tommy close, she realized the silence was wrong. The peaceful night was deceptive. Shadows danced at the edges of the trees, creeping closer, and in the distance, the faint whispers began to return. "You cannot escape. We are always here." Terror tightened around Sarah like a vice. Where was the safety she fought for? "We have to go," she said, pulling Tommy to his feet. They turned to run, but the world around them felt different now, almost more alive. The forest loomed ahead, its trees whispering secrets as the moonlight flickered through the branches. But morality tugged at her heart. Had they truly escaped, or was this merely the beginning? With each step, the weight of unseen eyes bore down on them, echoing the warning from the shadows that they could never truly escape. "What is happening, Mommy?" Tommy's voice was thin, quivering like a leaf in the wind, but as she looked back into the forest, a chilling realization settled in. They weren't alone. Now, deeper in the woods, something watched them, something waiting. And then she heard it, a soft, familiar voice, twined with the wind. "You will join us soon." Sarah's heart sank. That voice wasn't just a whisper, It was a promise. What does it want, Mommy? Tommy asked, his voice trembling. It wants everything, Sarah whispered, understanding that their battle was far from over. And as they raced ahead, shadows followed, whispering their eerie lullaby, inching closer with each heartbeat. As the night deepened around them, Sarah could feel the weight of memories and shadows tightening their grip. Desperation fueled her steps, but each crunch of grass beneath her feet echoed like a drumming heartbeat, reminding her of the horror that merely flickered beyond the trailing. She glanced at Tommy, his innocent face, once filled with excitement for their fishing trip, now haunted by fear and exhaustion. She couldn't let him see her trembling, could not let him sense her hesitance. Hang on tight, sweetheart. We're heading for the old factory. Remember the stories about the back entrance? She urged, voice sharper than she felt. She held his tiny hand tightly, almost crushing it in her grip as they dashed further away from the looming shadows that encroached on their every step. Tommy nodded, feigning bravery. Will we be safe there? His eyes darted behind them, searching the dark forest that seemed to writhe with ominous intent. Safer than here, she lied through gritted teeth, pushing her legs harder, praying the tales would be the truth. The factory loomed ahead, half hidden by creeping vines and decay, a relic of long-forgotten times. The front was blocked, but she knew a side entrance that might still be usable. This way, Tommy. As they sprinted around the dilapidated structure, their footsteps echoed ominously. The moonlight cast elongated shadows across the ground, almost as if the darkness itself thrived, hungry for them. Every creak of the old building sent shivers down her spine. They ran towards a rusty door that swung wildly, creaking on ancient hinges. Her heart sank as she pushed it wide open. Here, inside. The moment they stepped over the threshold, a rush of stale, musty air slapped their faces. The interior was dimly lit. Old machines littered the floor, remnants of a bygone era. Stay close, Tommy, she whispered, scanning the environment. There was something unsettling about the whispers, the way they echoed off the walls, morphing into unintelligible murmurs. Mommy, I don't want to be here, Tommy's voice quaked. Neither do I, but we're safe for now, she said. Though uncertainty dripped from her words, the whispering grew louder, wrapping around them like tendrils, gnawing at her senses. Is it the lake? Tommy's eyes grew wide, searching the shadows. I don't know, panic lanced through her, but she fought it down. As they moved deeper into the factory, Sarah was struck by fleeting images of fishermen, lost souls entangled in the curse of the lake. Their faces flickered into her mind as if the very walls were alive, remembering their pain. She tried to shove the horror away, focusing instead on the small, fragile boy by her side. But then they heard a deep rumble, like thunder shifting. Mommy? A sudden tremor rippled through the floor, knocking them off balance. Stay put, she shouted, and turned to steady Tommy. But a massive, dark figure loomed at the far end of the room, draped in shadows, its guttural growl booming as it shifted closer. Tommy shrieked, please don't let it run. Sarah's voice broke. They sprinted towards a narrow passage at the back, pushing through rusted debris. The shadows swirled and thickened, boiling over into a predatory menace that threatened to engulf them. She could hear the rumbling echoes of past fishermen mingling with the monstrous growls the lake's curse clawing at their heels. They slipped through the passage and emerged into another chamber, a stark brightness flooding around them. A set of stairs led upward. We must climb, she urged. Tommy looked at her with wide, terrified eyes. I don't want to go up. It's the only way, I promise. She pulled him forward, brimming with a fierce determination. As they ascended the stairs, that presence surged below them like dark water, rippling with hunger. They reached the top and pushed through a door to find themselves on a narrow catwalk stretching over the remnants of the factory's machinery. Look, Mommy, the window. Tommy pointed. Its light promised safety, but the shadows growled below, the predatory threat rising as if they would burst into the space at any moment. Sarah squeezed Tommy's hand tightly. We'll jump for it together. The moment hung thick with tension. Okay, on 3. She counted, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. 1, 2, 3. Together they launched themselves off the edge, the air rushing past them, hope pulling them toward freedom. They landed on the cold, hard ground below, rolling barely to avoid injury. But the shadows howled angrily, the whispers intensifying, almost drowning in their rage. Run, Sarah yelled, and they darted to the edges of the factory, sprinting towards the tree line beyond. Tommy's breath was hot against her. Mommy, what if it's not over? Look, Sarah pointed to the trees that separated them from the road. The moon spilled soft light over the path. We have to reach the road. It's our best chance. And as they raced forward, carrying their breaths heavy with fear and determination, the last flickers of shadows slinked back into the darkness, whispers fading behind them. Together they burst through the tree line, into the night where hope lived. They reached the asphalt, its surface solid under their feet. Tommy stopped, panting, looking back at the factory standing ominously behind them. But the whispers were quiet now, the shadows recoiling, as if the very essence of the lake was drawing back. Did we make it, Mommy? Tommy's voice trembled. She wrapped her arms around him, relief flooding through her. Yes, sweetie, we made it. Yet deep inside, Sarah felt the weight of their encounter trailing behind her as a shadow of doubt. The darkness may be gone for now, but she knew all too well that it never truly disappeared. The curse of the lake was insidious, lingering, waiting for its next whisper. As they stepped onto the road, she turned to Tommy, forcing a smile through her racing heart. Let us go home, buddy. But as the horizon brightened ahead, she couldn't shake the feeling although they escaped the grasp of the lake, the shadows would always remain a part of them. Mommy, Tommy said, looking up, do you think they'll come back for us? Yes, she whispered, but we'll be ready. And hand in hand, they walked into the dawn, carrying with them the shadows of the night. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.